Hello, welcome to Friday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, and on screen we have a puzzle by Phistomefel, no less. Not a recent puzzle actually, this appeared back in January 2020, but I've been suffering from a dearth of Phistomefel puzzles. He's been publishing sort of classic Sudokus on Logic Masters Germany for the last few weeks, all of which have involved some trick that he's discovered to do with sort of classic Sudoku logic. And there haven't been any Sudoku variants, so I've been missing you, Phistomefel. So what I did was I went back into his archive and I found this puzzle, which we never covered at the time. I don't know why. Maybe he was in a purple patch and was just publishing loads and loads of puzzles. But anyway, this has a hugely high rating, of course, because Phistomefel is Phistomefel, and and it also has a very unusual rule set which I've never seen before, so I'll tell you about that in just a moment. A few things to mention first. Some of you have commented that you really like our new intro. Well, so do we, and of course, given how sort of graphically amazing it is nothing to do with Mark and I. We have Joel Blundell to thank for this. Joel made this during lockdown. I think he's showcasing his graphic design skills, and we are very grateful. We really like it. Another thing we really like, which is fan created, appeared on our Twitter account today. I've tweeted about it, which is Seth Brown's Sudoku rap. He has made a rap about Cracking the Cryptic. That is not a sentence I ever thought I would say, but there is now a rap, and I definitely recommend listening to it. It's really quite good, and definitely a bit different. So I'll put a link under the video, but if you do follow us on Twitter, you'll also find a tweet about it today there. Anything else? For our patrons, because it's the start of the month, we have released a monthly reward puzzle. So we had our Sudoku puzzle hunt last weekend going live. We've had literally hundreds of correct solutions now, but we thought we would also do a bonus puzzle as well for July, and we've done a Queen Sudoku. Queen Sudoku is obviously part of the sort of suite of chess Sudoku puzzles, but remember with Queen Sudoku, the way it works is the nines operate like chess queens, only the nines. So that would mean in this puzzle, for example, if this cell was a 9, then there could not be any 9s along that diagonal. This is how the restriction works. Obviously, there can't be any 9s in these orientations either, but the one that really matters, the unusual one, is this diagonal here, and it only applies to the 9s, no other digits. So why did we decide to do a Queen Sudoku? Well, it's because our Chess Sudoku app has just had a massive update, which has included the release of our Queen Sudoku puzzles. We are very proud of them. We've been working on them for ages, and they're already getting some nice comments. So if you do have our Chess Sudoku app, do make sure you upgrade it or update it, because there's going to be lots and lots of new puzzles for you. There are also new puzzles in the classic Sudoku app. We also did an update on that as well. So lots of new puzzles for everyone to try. Anything else to mention? I don't think so. I can't think what else. That seems like enough news. So let's talk about Phistomefel's puzzle and the rules of this. And let's get rid of the 9 in the grid, otherwise I will get confused. So we've got normal Sudoku rules for this, and normal killer Sudoku rules. You can see that we've got cages in the grid, and as usual what we have to do is make sure that the digits in the cage sum to the clue in the top left hand corner without repeating a digit. So this 18 cage, for example, we've got to make the 3 cells add to 18, but those 2 cells cannot be the same. We have to have different digits. And there is this unlabeled cell, I noticed as I was putting it into our software. So I suppose this is there simply to make sure this digit is not the same as this digit somehow, or that digit. So it obviously can't be the same as that digit, but yeah, there's something going on in this cage which is a little bit interesting, but it's not as interesting as this next rule, which is, as I say, something I've never seen before. A number outside the Sudoku grid indicates the number of switches between odd and even numbers in the corresponding row or column. Now, what I did, Phistomefel kindly produced an example of this. Let me show you. Here it is on screen. So he did a 6x6 grid and sort of showing how he sees this switching technique working. So if we look along the row that has a 1 outside the grid, you can see that all of the even digits appear orthogonally connected, and then it switches to odd digits and all of the odd digits then appear. and there is exactly one switch, therefore, from even to odd in the row. If we contrast this with the 3 clue in the 6th column, look, we go 5, 1, well they're both odd, then it switches to an even digit, so that's one switch, then it switches back to odd, that's the 2nd switch, and then it switches back to even and stays even. So there are 3 switches from odds to evens and back again, and therefore there's a 3 outside the grid. So that is how this restraint works. I've no idea what it means, but as usual with Phistomefel, you can see it's got 97% approval rating. It's massively good because that's what this guy does. He produces masterpiece after masterpiece. Now, if you want to have a go at a masterpiece, what you do is you click the link under the video to play. And with that, I'm going to play. Let's get cracking. Now, let me just take a quick scan at the grid for any useful cages. There's a 22 cage there. That's got a container 9. I suppose I'll label it. Ah, no. Okay, the place it looks to me like we have to start is the 1 clue here, because that means there's exactly one switch from odds to evens or evens to odds along this row. So that means that there are exactly 2 groups of cells. There is a group of odds and a group of evens. Now there are 5 odd numbers between 1 and 9 inclusive, so the central cell has to be odd, because you can't put a run of 5 cells into a row without including the central cell. This can't be 1. Okay, alright, so yeah, so the 12 clue now, how do we make 12 in 2 digits if one of the cells is an odd number? Well, it must be another odd number. So this has to be odd as well. And now we actually know the polarity of every cell in the row, because there can only be, there's one group of evens, one group of odds. So I can't, for example, make those 5 odd numbers, because then there would be 2 groups of even numbers, and this clue should be 3, or should be 2, sorry, not 1. So we have to make these odd numbers to keep one group of odd numbers and one group of even numbers. So these are even numbers. In fact, what I'm probably going to do is to highlight. I'm going to colour in. I'm going to try and get good colours though. I have been concentrating with those of you who say that you suffer a bit from colour blindness. Many of you point out that I apparently suffer from it, which I hadn't realised before I started publicly doing Sudoku puzzles. But I will make odds blue and I will make evens orange, and I believe that's okay. So hopefully I'm not wrong about that. One of those has got to be a 1, because the 1s can't go in the 12 cage. And so 14 can either be 5 and 9, which would complete all of the odd digits for this box. But 5 and 9 won't work, because if we make this 5 and 9, I can't put 5s and 9s into those squares, so this becomes a 5-9 pair, and obviously 14 and 12 are not equal to one another, therefore I can't possibly put 5-9 in there. So this can't be 5-9, and it must be 6-8, and therefore we can colour it in orange. Oh, and now we can use the 2 clue. Because I can't create. I've got to be really careful. 2, I suppose the one way of thinking about these clues is we can add 1 to each of them, and that's how many blocks of digits we have to create in the column or row. So when it's a 2 clue, i.e. there are 2 switches, there are 3 groups of cells. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to keep the evens together, because if I don't keep the evens together, I'm going to have too many, for example, if I try and put an even square down there, then I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to have to put an odd digit in one of those 3 squares. I'm going to have 4 different blocks, and I must only have 3 different blocks. So I have to keep the even digits as a unit in order to make sure now I can have 2 odd blocks, and that will just about work. So this is odd, and this is odd. This is a strange constraint, isn't it? It plays with your head a bit, at least it plays with mine. So 2, 4 here means this has got to be 1, 6. So I'm going to label that purple because I'm going to label purple dominoes where one of them is even, one of them is odd, because I just need to keep track of that as well. We can... Yes, we can. We can do some arithmetic on this box. Box 3, we know it'll contain all the digits 1 to 9, therefore it will add to 45. Now we've got 19 in 3 cells, plus another 13 in those cells. 19 and 13 is 32, so in order to make sure the whole block adds to 45, those two have got to add up to 13. But we can't use 4, 9 because we'd repeat the 4, and we can't use 6, 7 because we'd repeat the 6. So these squares are 5 and 8, and that one is odd. So that's a 5, that's an 8, and therefore we colour the 8 in. No 5 down there. Let's label those up. 1, 3, 7, and 9. 6s and 8s, look, in these squares mean that 2 of these 3 squares have got to be 6 and 8. These squares have got to be 3, 7, and 9. Therefore, this can't be 3, 7, or 9. This is 1 or 5. Yeah, look, now we can use parity again here. We've got an odd digit in our 17 cage. So we know this domino has got to add up to an even number. So it's either 2 odd numbers or it's 2 even numbers. But if it's 2 even numbers, it can't use 6 and 8 because they're over this side of this box. So if it's 2 even numbers, it has to be the even numbers 2 and 4. Now 2 and 4 add to 6, which would make this square 11, which it can't be. Ergo, these are both odd. That's lovely. Now we get even numbers in the rest of the box, therefore this one is a 2 or a 4. It's so satisfying, this logic, isn't it? It's just really, really nice. Now, if we look at 1s maybe, we've got a 1 up there, so this must be from 3, 5, 7 and 9. There's a 1 in one of those 3 squares, which means this can't be a 1. Anything else we can conclude there? Let me just think about this for a second. And apologies if I'm being a bit slow. 3, 7, 9 here. Is that telling me something important? Yes, it is. It is. It's the fact that all these are even. So if we look at this, I know that the 1 and the 5 in this box are locked into those 3 squares somewhere. So this can't be a 1 or a 5. So, okay, yeah. And in fact, let's carry on with this logic. Well, there's many ways we can carry on with the logic. The first is to note that the 1 in this row now is forced to be here because it can't be in any of the other cells. The second thing we can note is that there's a 5, look, pushed into our 17 cage. And that's important, isn't it? Because that means the other 2 cells have got to add up to 12. So we can't use 5, 7 again, because then we'll have 2 5s and a 7 in the cage. So the only way that's going to work is with 3 and 9. So this 17 cage now is the numbers 3, 5 and 9. Oh, I didn't want to do it like that. 3, 5 and 9. This one is not 5. One of these 2 is 5. So this is a 1, 7 pair now. Oh, bobbins. sorry. This is not 7. Oh, now look, we can do more. 3, 9 here. So we can't make this 12 cage a 3, 9 pair now, or that square couldn't be filled. So this must be 5 and 7 to add up to 12. Therefore, that's not 7. And 1 here. So there's a 7 in one of those squares. We've actually done quite well by concentrating on this box here, but maybe I'm running out of steam now. I can label those up. They've got to be odd. Okay, I can't see anything else. No. All right, let's have a look at maybe the 20 cage. 20. Yeah, yes, in fact, the 20 cage is nice because we can't make 3 odd digits add up to 20, because if we add 3 odd digits together, we get an odd number. So one of the cells in the 20 cage must be even, and once one of them is even, we'll have found all the even cells in this box. So all of those have got to be odd. So there's 1 even cell in the 20 cage and 2 odd numbers, but we don't yet know how they're arranged. But we get 3 odd numbers at the start of the 5 row. That means we can do some logic, because we know there are 5 switches from odds, and starting at this end, they must go odd, even, odd, even, odd, even. So that means that this row ends with an even, and therefore that square must be even. I think that's right, isn't it? Oh, it can't be 7 then, so the 7 must live below it. So that becomes odd. So odd, it goes odd, even, odd, even. So yeah, okay. And as there's got to be 6 distinct blocks in this row, we've got 2. So we need 4 more distinct blocks in 4 cells. So we have to constantly switch parity. That's got to be odd. That's like that. And now, so now 1 switch, 2 switch, 3 switch, 4 switch, 5 switch. That is correct. And that's an even number, so it's not a 9. So the 9 is up here. That's not 9, therefore. And this adds to 22. Right, so if this is even, and this includes a 9, the other cell must also be odd in order to make sure that the polarity of the whole cage stays even. So that we can colour both of those in. And can we go further now? Let me just... So this has got to be a 2 or a 4 because it can't be a 6 or an 8. This has got to be even now because we need a 4th even cell in the box. Therefore the 5 must be here. This is a 2 or a 4. This square is part of a 22 cage, so that must be a 6 or an 8. We can't put a 2 or a 4 in, or we won't be able to make it as high as 22. So that's a 6-8 pair. So this is a 2 or a 4. Now look, we can do... Yeah, we can. Look, the 3 now. The 3 is telling us there are 4 distinct blocks of odds and even digits in this row. Now, if we start from this side now, rather than this side, we'll start from an odd digit. So we know that the pattern, as we move from this way along the row, it's going to have to be odd, then a string of evens, then a string of odds, then a string of evens. So this square has got to be an even digit. And once that's an even digit, we've got 4 even digits in the box. So those two have got to be odd. And we can go further because there are only, so we know this goes odd, even, odd, even. So this must actually, because there's only one odd here, this must be the string of all the rest of the odd digits. That must be the even. So this is the configuration of row 5. What a this is a lovely, lovely idea, isn't it? And now I'm getting my head round it. I'm sort of starting to understand some of the logic a bit better. So, that can't be a 4, because if it's a 4, I'd have to put 7 and 9 into those two squares, and I can't. So that's not 4. So there's a 2 and a 4 in those squares, so this can't be 2 or 4. 6, 8 pair, now that becomes a 2 or a 4, which we could have seen anyway looking at row 5. Right, so where do we go now? Just a second, let me try and understand. So if this is 6, that's 5 and 9. Oh, in fact, look. The 5s by Sudoku, there is a 5 in the 20 cage. So it can't have an 8 in it, because if there was an 8 in it, it would be 8, 5, 7, and the 7 would clash. So this is a 6. This is a 6. This is an 8. That's an 8, and that's a 6. And this is a 5, 9 pair. And therefore, this is a 1, 3 pair. That places the 9. The 9 fixes the 9 in the 22 cage. The fact there's an 8 in the 22 cage means the other digit must be a 5 to make it add up. The 5 fixes the 5 and the 7. So there's a 5 now in our 15 cage, look. Okay, so now we can do this trick, we can do parity again on this one. So we know there's a 5 in it, so the other two digits either have to both be even or both be odd in order to ensure we get to an odd number overall. If they are both even, they have to be 2 and 4. And 2 plus 4 plus 5 does not equal 15. So this is 3 odd numbers. And that completes the column. That's all the odd numbers we're going to need. So these two are even, and they must therefore be 2 and 4. Okay. 2, 4. So these squares have got to be 1, 3, and 7 to complete either the box or the row. You take your chances. Okay. Now let's try and work out what we do next. Yes, we need to look at this column. We have a 3 clue here, and we have a run of 4 odd numbers already. So if we were to include an odd number in either of those positions, what would this clue have to be? It would have to be a 2 clue, because there would only be 3 different blocks of units. There's going to be even, a whole string of odds, and then even at the bottom. So that the clue would have to be 2. So then this run of 4 needs to be framed, if you like, by 2 even blocks. Therefore, this square as well needs to be even, because if we make that odd, this would axiomatically then be even, and we would have this arrangement, and I think that's not going to add up to 3 switches. 1, 2, 3, 4 switches. No. So this square is also got to be even. Now, do we know if this is odd, this would be even? That's yeah, no, we don't know. These two could be either way round at the moment, and we still only have 4 blocks of units. So we don't know what the extremity's doing here, but we do know that these 3 squares are even. So this one has got to be a 6 or an 8, look, because there's a 2, 4 in the box, and indeed there's a 2, 4 in the row. That's of course important because this is a 9 domino, and a 9 domino must include an odd number and an even number. So this is going to, this domino, I'll make it purple, has to include the fourth even digit in row 2 of the grid. So this square can't also be even. So that's odd, that's even. Let's label it up. Those two must both be odd, therefore. Now there's two things that are catching my eye here. Firstly, the 6 clue. Secondly, the 3 clue, because I've just noticed, look, I know the parity. I think that this puzzle is interesting. Once you know the parity of the cell at one end, you can work out the parity at the other end of the row or column. So let's think about this. We know there are 4 blocks of units in here, so it's going to go, starting from this end, it's going to go even, odd, and you can see it's forced. This therefore has to be even, and this all has to be odd in order to create the 4 blocks that we need. So now, is that useful? It must be a bit useful. Oh, in fact, the 15 cage is forced now, isn't it? Because they can't include a 9, so it must be 3, 5, and 7 into those squares. That's got to be a 1. That's a 3. We still don't know the parity of those two yet. We haven't, yeah, look. 9 in this row. 9 in row 7 can't go in those 2 odd squares, so it must be in one of those 3 squares. That might be, well, it's a little bit important for the 19 cage now. So if the 19 cage hasn't got a 9 in it, it must have an 8 in it, because 7, 6 and 5 only add to 18, so there's definitely an 8 in one of those squares. So it's 8, and then it's either going to have 4, 7 or 5, 6 alongside it. Oh, and this, right, let's look at the 6 clue now. So we don't yet know the parity of both ends of this, but we do know, well, there's no way this can possibly be an odd number, because if this is odd, there are only 2 odd blocks, and there could only be a maximum of 3 even blocks. So that would be 5 blocks for the column, and there needs to be 7. So this definitely has to be even. So now we've got up to 3. Yeah, okay, so we're going to be able to finish this, look. We've now got up to 3 odd blocks and 2 even blocks. And I need 7 blocks overall. So if I make this an odd number, you can see I can't make this work anymore. If this is odd, I need to finish this column with another odd digit. But if this is odd, I've already used the 5 odd digits up, so that's even. So we need to finish with an even, and therefore that is the configuration. Now this should have 7 different colours in it, or 7 different blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. So this square now, this square has to be an 8, because there's a 2, 4 here and a 6 in the row. So that's an 8. This has got yeah, okay, this 9 cage has got to have a 6 or an 8 in it, and it can't have an 8 in it anymore. So this has got to have a 6 in it, and there's a 6 here. So that's the 6, that's the 3, and we can label up the parities. The 6 forces that to be an 8, look. That means there's an 8 in one of those cells. By SUDOKU, that's a 6, look, I haven't said that very much. 6, there's a 6 in one of those by SUDOKU. Okay, so now that's not 8. So we've got 2, 4 and 6. So this is a 2 or a 4, so this must be a 6 at the bottom. That's not 6 anymore. That's not 6 anymore. I don't know how we're going to figure out these 2s and 4s around the grid. There seem to be Can't immediately see how we're going to maybe it's the 19 cage that will disambiguate that for us. That square's got to be coloured in. I will do that. That actually shows me, look, those two squares have got to be odd because we've already got 4 even digits in row 3. So this is a domino. We know one of these is odd, one of these is even, but both of those are odd to complete that box. So I've done the 6th clue. Now that's nice. Yeah, that is nice because now look, now I know the parity of column 5 of the grid. So that square's got to be the last even digit. That finishes box 8 of the grid. So those two have got, so where does the 8 go now? In box 8 of the grid. It can't go in these two squares, so it's got to go in that one. Now that's forced 8 out of this 18 cage. So the 18 cage now has 2, 4 or 6 in this square. So if it was 2, this would have to be 7 and 9. If it was 4, this would have to be 14, which is impossible. This is not 4. If it was 6, this would have... if it's 6, this has to be 12, and it can't be that either. So this must be 2, that must be 7, that must be 9. That places a 3 here, gives us a 1, gives us a 3, and we are cooking with gas all of a sudden. Now let's try and finish this reasonably efficiently for once. 3. Yeah, look at this row. That's got to be a 7 because it's a sort of naked single looking at the odds. This is a 3 and this is a 1. That's a 9, that's a 5. That fixes the 5 and the 9. The 3 fixes the 3 and the 7. There's a 9 in one of the domino, or in the domino up in the top left. And therefore those two squares are 1 and 7, which is unresolved. 7 is not there. So how are we going to finish this then? We've got... it is this cage, isn't it? It's this 19 cage, especially now there's a 6 in the box, because if there's an 8 in here, the other two cells have got to add to 11, but they can't be 2, 9, they can't be 3, 8, and they can't be 5, 6. So this is a 4, 7, 8 triple. And I've spotted something about that, look. It's got 2, I've spotted a few things about that. It's got 1 odd digit in it. Combined with 4 odd digits makes this an even digit. But more important than that, I suspect, 2 here therefore, 2 here, is the fact that, look, I've got 7s locked into those squares in columns 1 and 2. So in box 1, I know that where the 7 is, it's in column 1 or 2. In box 7, the 7 is in column 1 and 2. Therefore, I can't have any more 7s in this puzzle in column 1 and 2. In particular, those two squares can't be 7. So this square must be a 7. The 3 then gives me the 3 and the 1. That gives me the 1 and the 7. That gives me a 7 down here. And we get a 4, 8 pair, and that's lovely. That tells us the parity, doesn't it? So we've now locked, we know exactly what's going on in column 1 of the grid. We can get the 2, 4 and the 8. This square now must be odd and so has to be a 9. Let's colour it in. That one's going to be even. This has got to be a 2 or a 4. And the 2 here, look, this little 2 is going to disambiguate all of this stuff that we've got floating around the grid. 2, 4, 4, 2, 4, 2. Now hopefully we're going to be able to get into this 2, 4 stuff over here as well. Yeah, this 2 gives me a 4, 4, 2, 4, 2, like that. We need to put a 4 into one of those squares. That must look like this. This is a 6, 8 pair. You can see that's resolved now. The 8 and the 4 backfire over there. And I think we're on the home straight. It's just a gorgeous puzzle, isn't it, by Phistomefel? I mean, you expect nothing less, but it's just the way the logic works is so satisfying. So this is a 3 and a 1. Yeah, I think we're on the home straight. 5, 7 here. So this is 1, 9. That's going to backfire over there. That's going to give me the 5 and the 7. Let's have a quick look at the grid. It's all coloured in. It looks right. It says it's right, so that's how to solve it. I hope you enjoyed watching that. I certainly enjoyed the puzzle, and let me know in the comments how you get on. We do read all the comments and we really enjoy them, so yeah. Thanks for watching. Back later on with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.